pain. Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Welcome back to the LPVO channel as we continue to talk about many different budget-oriented or sort of mid-range LPVOs. Now, I'll get straight to it. This is the Vortex Strike Eagle Gen 2, their 1-6 model, and I do think that this is an absolutely excellent budget optic for the money, and we're going to go ahead and get into that. But before we get started, I did want to mention if you guys want to help out the channel in any way, because of course these reviews are not cheap to make and the ammo is quite expensive. So if you want to, go ahead and check out any of the links in the description. I have an Instagram, I have a subscribe star where I post a lot of exclusive content over there if you want to subscribe there. And of course, if you're here, you might as well like, share, and subscribe. So this is, as I mentioned, the Vortex Strike Eagle Gen 2, the 1-6 version. It is, of course, a 30mm tube, 24mm objective lens. It's fairly standard in terms of size and weight. I think it's a little bit over 17 ounces, and it's a little bit over 10 inches long. It's basically the exact same form factor as the 1-8 and the previous generation as well. Now, when we're talking about budget optics, of course, price is one of the most important features. So generally speaking, you can find this for around the $300 mark with a mount, or you can find it sometimes a little bit less without a mount. So depending on where you get it, you'll get it for $250 to $300. Now, it should be mentioned that I spent like $280 with a mount, then I sold the mount for like $60. So basically I ended up paying like $220 for this. Yes, I did pay my own money for it, and I've actually had it for quite some time. I picked it up from Palmetto State Armory while they were having a really good deal on it. I bought the 1-6 and the 1-8, and we're just now getting around to reviewing the 1-8. But I've had them both for just as long, and probably have slightly more rounds on the 1-8 just because I've been filming with it and using it a lot more. But the 1-6 is also a very, very good option for, again, that sort of budget-friendly market. Now, there are two main features that instantly separate it from the Gen 1 versions of the optics, that being that it now has an integrated throw lever, which is very, very nice. The throw lever itself just threads on, so all I did was when I first threaded it on, I put some blue Loctite in there, and it has not come loose at all over about probably anywhere from 600 800 rounds or so. Has not come loose at all and have not had to adjust it. And the other thing that's different is the new AR-BDC3 Reticle, which is a really, really good reticle. I'll go ahead and put that up on screen for you. They did a really good job with the reticle design. It's good for out to about 600 yards. The furthest that I've taken both the 1-6 and the 1-8 is 550 yards. Just using the BDC, I've been able to get first round impacts at 550 yards on my 16-inch, not this AR right here, though I did take this in here at the 400. So I've done a decent amount of long-ish range shooting on AR-15s with this, and it has done a really, really good job when I'm doing my part. So now let's go ahead and talk about the reticle and the glass and how it feels to actually run and gun and use this scope at medium to long range. So first up, let's go ahead and talk about eye relief. Now, despite what Vortex claims on their website, the eye relief on 1X is anywhere from like 3.5 to 4.5 inches. You have a huge amount of eye relief on 1X. It's very, very forgiving, very easy to use, and very, very fast to find the reticle inside of the optic. And then of course, when you rack it all the way up to 6, you really don't have to move your head at all, which is very nice, though it does, of course, the eye box tightens up and the overall field of view does shrink down, of course. Now, talking about field of view, one of the best features on the Strike Eagle Gen 2, the 1-6 version, is its immense field of view. At 1X, you have 117 feet of field of view at 100 yards. Now, 117 feet is extremely good. That beats out most high-end optics. There are only a handful of optics that have more sight radius at 100 yards than 117 feet. For me personally, I consider anything over 100 to be good, and a lot of high-end optics are in the 105 to 110 range, but this one here at 117 feet means that when you're looking through the optic, there is a huge amount that you can see, which can help you a lot, especially if you're transitioning targets in close to medium range. Being able to see more through the optic without being obstructed by the optic is a huge help. This is one of those optics, when you're looking down it on 1X, the outside of the optic tends to almost look like it disappears, so you're almost just looking through the glass and just see the glass and the reticle, and the outside of the optic is just a very, very thin black line, which I really, really like. So the optic itself does not obstruct your vision at all, and again, has that immense field of view at 1X, which is one of the best features on the 1-6 version, and I think one of its best benefits against the 1-8. Now, talking about the 1-8, which I actually have right here, it also has very, very good, what I would consider field of view. It is 110 feet at 100 yards, which for a 1-8 is very, very good. And you will notice it if you look against the 1-8 and the 1-6 back to back. You will notice that the field of view on the 1-8 is a little bit tighter. You know, you get that extra 7 feet, which doesn't sound like a lot, but remember that you're talking about a circle, so surface area is vastly different when talking about that, not just like a square. So having that very wide field of view at 1x means that you can be very, very fast when picking up targets and transitioning between targets at close to medium ranges. And it also helps that at 6x, you still have a good amount of field of view. I think it goes down to about 16 feet at 100 yards, which is still fairly good for that 6 power. So now let's go ahead and talk about how the reticle works with the eye relief and the field of view. So the reticle is, again, as I mentioned, the AR-BDC3 reticle, I think is what they're calling it, which is very, very good. It has a kind of a half donut on top with some hash marks in it, and then a center dot which illuminates and does actually get fairly bright. We'll talk about the illumination in a second. But the reticle itself, taking illumination out of the fact, is very, very usable up close. Of course, because this is a second focal plane optic, it does not change in size, and I think its size is really, really good for not only being fast up close, but also being precise enough at long range. Like I said, with this optic and my 16-inch AR, we were able to make first-round impacts on a 12x18 steel target at 550 yards, just using the BDC and the reticle with 75 grain PPU match ammunition, which isn't great ammunition, but fairly decent ammunition. So this optic does a really, really good job of balancing speed with precision at long range. And again, it is second focal plane, which in my opinion is my preferred for 1-6, 1-8s. Up until you get into the higher magnification ranges, first focal plane really doesn't matter that much to me. Now, I've already mentioned it, so let's go ahead and talk about the illumination. The illumination goes from 1 to 11, and the illumination gets very, very bright. So at 11 in daylight, it's not what I would consider like red dot bright or like aim point or anything like that. It's not going to bloom out on you or anything, but it is going to be tinted that orange, like a soft orange, soft red color at 11 in full daylight, you know, looking into the sun, that sort of thing. So it does absolutely 100% help you acquire targets, to pick up that reticle even faster. Like I said, it is a good reticle without the illumination, but having that really hot, bright illumination, and again, it just illuminates the kind of the half donut and the center dot, which makes it very, very precise and very fast up close. So I really like the illumination on both the 1-6 and the 1-8. The only thing I will say about the 1-8 in general is that because, of course, they are both second focal plane optics, so the reticle size in the 1-8x is actually 30% larger. Of course, because you have 30% more magnification at the top end, so that means you have to make the space in between your hash marks about 30% larger, of course, because they're using the exact same reticle. So the reticle in the 1-8 is actually 30% larger, which means that it's actually thicker and faster up close because, of course, that reticle, the donut is thicker, it has a bigger center dot, it's still very, very hot on 11, and so it's even faster on 1x, which is strange. You would think a 1-6 with a smaller magnification range would be better at 1x, but the 1-8 actually has a faster reticle just because it's a little bigger, a little bit easier to pick up. That being said, what you miss out on speed, you definitely pick up in precision because, of course, because the reticle is about 30% smaller, it's a little more fine, and so you can get a little bit more refined shots. And so that's going to be more personal preference, whether you prefer, like I prefer something big and clunky and just draws my eye right to it, where you might prefer something that's a little bit thinner and a little bit more fine for more precision shooting, so you can put your shots exactly where you want, even in close range. I think it's a great scope for anything from 0 to 400, 0 to 500 yards. When you get longer than that, I would prefer to have like 8x magnification, because again, that is 30% more magnification at the top end. But for those mid-range, you know, 0 to 400, 0 to 500, I think this scope is 99% as capable as the 1-8 for, again, a little bit less money, but we'll talk about that later. So I've tried this out on a bunch of different guns, including this really heavy M16 lookalike thingy, and it's performed very, very well. And honestly, for AR-15s in general, unless you have like a special purpose rifle or a little bit more of a DMR build, a 1-6 is going to basically match the capabilities of most rifles. Anything from a 10.5 to a 16-inch barrel, I really don't like going beyond 400 or 500 yards, especially with just ball ammunition. If I'm going farther than that, I like to have longer barrels and I like to have heavier match grade ammunition. So, but since most of us are just putting ball ammunition through it, you know, whether it's cheap wolf or just like some sort of cheap brass ammunition, something like that, most of what we're shooting is going to be really inexpensive ball ammunition, which is going to be fine for, you know, 0 to 400 yards, but as soon as you start to try and stretch its legs a little bit, you're going to be lacking a little bit. So if you're using really expensive ammunition and trying to go long range with an AR-15, you're probably going to have a slightly different optic setup, and of course you're going to be using different ammunition. But like I said, for most people who are just running ball ammunition, their use case scenario is 0 to 400 yards. You have that immense field of view at 1x, which means that you can pick up your targets very fast. You have a good illumination on your reticle, which means that it's very fast to pick up the reticle. There's really not a lot that the scope can't do. So in terms of features and performance, especially for the money, there's really not anything more that I can ask from a scope like this to be very capable from like 0 to 550 yards. Is it my preferred choice at long range? No, but will it work at long range? Absolutely. And the BDC reticle means that you can do it very quickly and very efficiently, given that you're using the right ammunition, barrel length, caliber, all that sort of fun stuff, that it lines up correctly with your BDC. Now, let's go ahead and talk about durability on it. Like I said, I'm about 600, 800 rounds deep. I have been doing a little bit lower round counts in my reviews, just because ammo is getting more and more expensive. I still have a ton of it stored up, so I'm still shooting quite a bit, but I'm trying to be slightly more efficient with my round counts and to do more durability testing in other ways. So if you'll notice here on the body, I have several scratches on here and kind of almost dents where I've completely taken away the anodization on the optic, which of course is a black anodized 6061, I think, aluminum. It could be 7075. And on top of that, I've also done the standard double drop test to check for zero shift. I actually did it on my 12.5-inch gun, but somehow I lost the footage for it. That being said, I will mention it at 50 yards. I fired two 3-round groups, one after a double drop test. So one on top of the optic, one on the side of the optic, and I had about a 1/2-inch shift. The group was basically right on top of each other, but there was a slight shift upward of about a 1/2 inch at 50 yards. So still be on target. But you know, if you drop your optic a couple times onto rocks or something like that, you probably want to check your zero. So zero shift, in my opinion, is negligible, very, very good, very durable. Of course, I didn't break it. I did also do a submersion test with it, and of course, it held up perfectly fine. Now, let's go ahead and talk about value, because I think that this is one of the best value scopes on the market right now, especially for under 300 bucks most of the time. So for under 300 bucks, you get a very, very good 1x magnification. You get decent glass, good brightness, good clarity, all that sort of good stuff. You also get a very good reticle on its own that's very usable up close and usable out to long range. Like I said, I've taken it out to 550 yards. You get really decent illumination. It's really, really bright for this price point. There's not a lot to be desired there. Again, you know, maybe it could be a little bit brighter, but for what it is definitely usable in full daylight, and I use it all the time. And so I really like running and gunning with this just because it is a very, very fast gun to shoot. And another part of that value equation is, of course, the Vortex VIP warranty, which is, of course, a fully transferable lifetime warranty. If you break it in any way, they will replace it for you free of charge. The only thing you have to do is mail them the broken pieces of the optic and they will replace it for you. So now let's go ahead and talk about competitive options. I think really in the 1 to 6 market, the only thing that comes close to it for, again, that under $300 is probably the Primary Arms second focal plane with their ACSS reticle, because I think you can get those for under 300 bucks. So those are going to be very close. Some people will, of course, prefer the ACSS reticle because it is a really, really good reticle. I am going to be getting my hands on one of those soon, and we will do a more direct comparison to this optic because I think that they are two of the best under $300 LPVOs, especially in the 1 to 6 range. But another one of its competitors is, of course, the Strike Eagle Gen 2, the 1 to 8 version. Now, the 1 to 8 version has two advantages, in my opinion. Of course, that reticle is 30% larger, and like I said, in close range, I do prefer larger reticles. That I find them personally a little bit faster, whereas you might prefer something a little bit smaller, a little bit more precise. That's more of a personal preference, but I do like the slightly larger reticle in the 1 to 8x. Also, having that 8x, that extra magnification, again, that's 30% more magnification than your 1 to 6, really helps you to stretch out to 500, 600 yards. So when I was doing my 550 yards with both the 16-inch and the DMR, or in the ACR in its DMR configuration, I was getting much better impacts and much easier impacts with the 1:8 than the 1:6, just because you get that extra magnification, which allows you to be that much more precise.
Nice shot.
Nice, 3 in a row, one more.
Hit. Y'all just suck. Hit.
So as I mentioned several times, I really like this optic. It's been very durable for me. I haven't had an issue with zero shift. I haven't had an issue with it breaking during all my testing with it. And I find it very usable in just about any situation. Like I said, it pretty much matches the capabilities of the AR platform for the most part. I know that there are a lot of specialty builds or SPR builds where you might need a little more magnification, but for probably 90 to 95% of people, this 1:6 will meet or exceed their needs. So for me, for under 300 bucks right now, it's the best optic that I have tested for, again, in that $250, $300 price point, especially considering not only the glass clarity, the brightness of the reticle, the warranty, all that sort of good stuff. So that's pretty much it for the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. If you made it this far, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. Like I mentioned, it does help out the channel. But that's pretty much it. Thank you guys once again for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace off.